This is the Podio welcome webinar. Anyone who's new, heard about Podio, haven't really gotten started, this is the place for you. If you've been around for a while, but you kind of lost your way and need some help, this is also for you.
I'll talk for just a couple of minutes about the Podio journey. What a lot of Podio customers kind of experience as they get started and eventually start bringing work into the platform. I'll focus in really on what do we want to take away today, right? So if you're somebody who's getting started with Podio, or maybe even you haven't gotten started, maybe you're just interested in learning more about it. What do you want to take away in terms of the first couple of things you really want to do to get value from the platform? In order to do that, we'll go through kind of a quick getting started demo with a really simple use case, show you around the platform, show you some different features and capabilities, and really hopefully give you an idea as to where to start with getting things moving. And then we'll come back and talk about helpful resources that you have available to help you along your Podio journey. I'm not going to go through this whole slide, but I'll share with you just what we observe from the Podio side is being fairly typical for most Podio customers and how they get started and ultimately grow with the platform. So, as many of you know, if you're here, Podio is what we call a work management or work OS platform. It's really, really good at managing a number of different use cases. So whether you're looking at Podio for a specific department, or you're part of a specific industry and you want to use this related to more of an industry focus, what we always tell customers and what we always found helpful is, figure out one business process to get started. So everybody always starts with one idea with Podio, one use case that's really important to them to get started. And we really encourage customers, to not necessarily boil the ocean right out of the gate, but to really figure out what's going to get you the most value very quickly, and to get building around that. Typically what happens is once we get that process mapped out and we talk about getting some workspaces and apps in place, now we start to do things like import our work and bring people together around that work inside Podio. And it's really important to do that. It's really a critical point because that's where we start to see whether or not Podio is going to meet the goals for our team or not. And so a lot of times what will happen is we might be managing work in a spreadsheet or another tool, or maybe even just through shared email inboxes. And so once you get your team wrapped around a Podio workspace and they're working in a series of apps, that's when you really start to see and get a feel for what kind of value is that bringing your team, what are areas that you can improve upon and continue to build as you go. And then ultimately, what are areas that you might be able to automate and make even more efficient. So it's really fun when you kind of get to that point. We always kind of internally call it the Podio effect, where the light bulb goes off. A team is really excited about now working inside of Podio. They're getting value, around that use case that they've built. And what's really cool to see happen from there is that's when teams start to ask questions. There might be other teams in the organization that say, hey, what's this thing you guys are using over here to manage this kind of work? Or maybe, you want to take what you've built, and expose other teams or departments to it. That's really where the magic starts to happen with Podio. It really starts to become a central platform for all types of departments, all types of work to happen, to really increase visibility, to everything that's going on. So, from there, ultimately, we have customers that they use Podio to manage lots of different departments, lots of different use cases. They're leveraging workflow automation to automate a lot of different processes. And for them now, it's just a matter of continuous improvement. How can they continually adopt and improve their processes? How can they provide a better, experience for their customers or for their teams internally? Everybody's kind of talking about, how can we leverage potentially AI as part of our workflows? And so as you get really going with Podio and you get past kind of the initial, stages of the journey, eventually you'll find yourself hopefully building more and more and really starting to do a lot of cool things. But with all that journey in mind here, really we just want to focus on today, right? A lot of us, like we said, are just exploring Podio. We're just getting started. So what do we want to focus on taking away today? It's really just a handful of things. Number one, you would hear me say this over and over and over anytime I'm talking to a customer about building something inside of Podio, is map and understand your process. It always was kind of fascinating to me as a partner, as a consultant, when I would ask a customer, okay, you want to manage your lead intake process. Explain to me how that works. A lot of times the answer you get from one or two people may not be the full answer, right? A lot of times there's different interpretations or different versions around what any given process should look like or how it actually works. So we always encourage customers to map that process out and really make sure the team is in agreement on that before they start building. And like I said earlier, start with one solution, start with one use case. Podio is really easy to use. There's a lot of features. It is kind of fun to get carried away and just start building all sorts of things. But when you're just getting started, pick that one solution or one use case that's going to be the most valuable to your team. Next, obviously, get your team using it. So, if you're somebody who's signed up for Podio and you see a lot of potential, and you're already building, applications and structure inside of Podio, it doesn't really do a whole lot of good if the team's not using it. So, make sure to, enable your teams around what you've built, how things work, how you as a team kind of expect to use this solution, and make sure everybody's got the buy-in in terms of using it. And then over time, just validate that it works. Like I said earlier, you're probably going to see, areas where after the first week or after the first 2 weeks, you're going to say, oh, we should add a field here, or we should track this thing, or we should automate this, part of the process. So, as you go through and you get your team using this every single day, you're going to get that feedback loop, and you're going to want to validate, what's working and what's not working as you start to continue to expand and adopt additional capabilities. And then finally, identify a champion. Usually, not always, but usually this is the person, who originally signs up for Podio and starts building things. But we've seen with a number of customers, once you start getting going, and you get other team members involved, you start to see people who are really passionate about improving business processes or leveraging technology to bring teams together. Those are folks that you really want to bring into the fold, and help them understand how you've built things, what your plans for future uses in Podio are, and help enable them, into different things that they can also do to help you grow with the platform. So that's what we want to focus on today. I'll stop for a second before we go forward. Kelly, see if you've got any comments or if we've got any questions yet so far.
No questions so far. I do always have comments,
Awesome.
but I will wait until later.
Okay. Okay, cool. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide, but again, I mentioned that Podio is obviously a work management, work OS platform. It's got a lot of different use cases. So we've seen it used across a number of departments. We've seen it used across a number of different industries. So, again, what typically happens is once people get acquainted to Podio and how Podio works, in at least one use case, all of a sudden, the light bulb goes off and they say, I know about this spreadsheet that's managing work that we could make disappear. I know about this rigid piece of software over here that nobody likes. We could make that, even better with Podio. So, I would encourage you, as you get going, to start thinking outside of the box in terms of use cases, and really diving into some of the resources we've got available. And we'll talk about those later, because I think what you'll find is there's a number of different things you can do with Podio. And one of our number one challenges is trying to communicate to our customer base all the different things that are possible with Podio. So I did want to make sure that we mentioned just a couple of use cases. Okay, so if there's no questions, I'm going to go ahead and jump over to a demo environment, and we'll kind of show you, what getting started could look like here. And just a quick check, Kelly, you see Podio on the screen now, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, so what I've done here, just a little while ago, I signed up for an account. I called the organization webinar demo. Now, your organization's probably going to be called whatever your company name is. Your organization is the topmost layer, of Podio. So your organization's going to house all of your workspaces and all of the places your team's going to do work. So workspaces, the best way to think about a workspace is just a hub for a specific kind of work. And sometimes customers will have maybe one workspace that has a number of different functions. So maybe I've got a workspace that handles some sales work, some project work, and some invoicing work, or depending on how I want to break those teams up and what I want those teams to see or not see, I might have separate workspaces. Some companies will use workspaces by department, right? Again, Podio allows you the flexibility to really decide how to best structure the platform for your team's use, depending on the use case that you want to use it for. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a workspace. Let's call this demo projects. So I'm going to set this to private, so I'll see it, but nobody else can jump into it unless I invite them. And I'm just going to click create. Now you'll see right away, Podio wants me to invite people. You can certainly do that. If you've got somebody that, as you get started, is very knowledgeable about the process or use case that you're building, you can certainly invite them at this time. I usually just say, no, I don't have anybody to invite yet because I want to wait until I've got something built to invite them. So a quick kind of highlight here, this is the workspace homepage. Or activity page, I'm sorry. There's not a lot here yet, right? Eventually what this will turn into is almost like the dashboard, if you will, for the workspace. So as we start building apps and adding items and people start updating items inside of Podio, you'll see all of those updates and activities show up in the activity stream here. I can also share just general updates. So, I could say, welcome to the workspace. To nobody because I didn't invite anybody yet. I could launch a poll or share a link or a file. And over on the right, you'll see these tiles. And these can be a number of different things. And we'll kind of build these out later on. But tiles can be things like report widgets. They can be things like, a set of helpful links. A number of different things that we can put here. Again, with the goal being that this is kind of the dashboard for our team to come in, and see what's going on with all of the projects. So we'll come back to that in a little bit. What I want to do next is I want to create what Podio calls apps. And apps really are kind of the heart and soul of Podio. So really all an app is a data table. And so if I wanted to manage something, for example, projects, you see here I've got this little spreadsheet. Let me move it because it opened on the other screen. So today I'm managing my projects in a spreadsheet. You see I've got project name, customer name. I've got a status, a start date and an end date, some notes. And I'm also tracking how many hours, we projected, and what's the hourly cost, per hour. But what I want to do is I want to replicate that inside of Podio. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click add an app. And I'm going to create my own app. Now, depending on your use case and your industry, there is a public app market. There's all sorts of pre-built templates and things to give you different ideas. I certainly encourage you, to go explore that. In my experience, a lot of times, if I find something in the app market, it's really good to see how somebody else has approached a certain use case. But a lot of times you'll spend time kind of modifying the apps and removing fields and changing fields. In this case, since I'm starting from scratch, I'm going to just go ahead and create my own since I already have a data model with that spreadsheet. So I'm going to click create my app. And what I'm going to do is give the app a name. So I'm going to call this project or projects and an item. Each item or the equivalent in our spreadsheet, each row, each item is going to be an individual project. My app type, I'm going to leave as standard, and I'm going to pick from a number of different icons. Let's do something like this. And I can choose the standard layout. Now you'll see in a little bit, The layout can be adjusted later on for the team or for you as an individual. I don't know why, it's just nature, kind of muscle memory. I always set the standard layout to table. It makes the most sense to me. I can also leave an app description and instructions for creating an item. There is a set of advanced settings. I won't go through all of those right now, but it allows you additional controls, over your app. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Create App. Now, this is where the flexibility and the ease of use of Podio comes in. So if you remember in my spreadsheet, I've got all of these different columns here. And what I want to do is I want to go recreate those fields in my Podio app template. So you'll see here, I've got a text field by default. I'm going to call that my project name. Let's see, what else do I have? I had customer name. For now, I'm just going to use a text field. We'll come back to this later. Customer name. Each of these fields also has its own configuration options. So you can see this is set to multi-line. I'm going to change that to single line. So status, what's really cool is I can use this category field type, and this can serve a number of different purposes. In this case, I'm going to use this for project status. I could also use it for type. I can also use it for a simple, yes, no checkbox. Because you have the flexibility, to choose what you want these category options to be. There's a lot of different use cases for this category field. What I'm going to do is make this single choice, and I'm going to make the visual inline. But what I'm going to do is go back and look, what were my choices here? I had okay, not started in progress. That's right. So I'm going to do not started in progress, hold, completed. Okay. And you'll see I can even adjust the coloring here. So not started, I could say, let's say in progress is green. Let's say on hold is yellow. What's kind of nice here is I can pick really any color I want. We'll make completed blue. Let's go back to this. And we'll make canceled. Actually, I want canceled to be gray and I want this to be red. So I've got full control over, what this will ultimately look like. I'm going to go ahead and add my dates, notes. So I'm going to add a date field, notes field. And what did I have? I had a number field and I had a dollar field. So again, what I'm doing is I'm just setting up the fields, to match the types of columns and data that I'm housing here. So let's do project dates. Now, dates are kind of interesting because I can choose a number of different formats. I'm going to say show, or I want to hide the time entry, but show the end date. And I want it to show in the Podio calendar, which I'll come back to in a bit. Project notes, project hours, and then hourly rate. So I've got my template set up. I can click done. And now what you'll see is I can add a project. So let's call this test project. I'm going to say it's not started. Let's say the dates are the dates of July. Let's say this is 50 hours, and let's say the rate is 200. And I can save my project. So if I come back out here real quick, again, we'll see I'm in table view. I can scroll across. I can see, the details here. I can even choose which columns to see and not see. So if there's certain columns I don't want to see in this view, I can remove those. But what I'm going to do is just go through a couple of pieces to an item. So what's nice about Podio is the collaboration aspect. So in a spreadsheet, a lot of times what people will add is, a notes column or a latest update column. In Podio, this is a little bit different. What's nice about Podio is we've got the ability to bring the conversation and the comments into the context of the thing we're working on. So, for example, if I wanted to leave a comment for somebody or an update, I could just simply say update, project moving to in progress. That's probably not a very realistic one, but just for as an example, I can come in and change the status. I can add project notes, you know, do this. And again, what it does is it allows me to bring my team together around all of these projects that are going on. So what's really kind of nice is once I get this structure in place, I can actually bring the rest of my data in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and close this. But since we're talking about just getting started, I'm going to do an Excel import, and I'm going to go grab that file and drag it here. Now, what's nice about this is I can bring all of this information in, you know, and get rid of my spreadsheet. So I'm going to map the project name, customer name, the project status. Now I have a start and end date. So you'll see this dropdown allows me to take the specific start date and the end date. I'm going to choose the date format. I'm going to choose my notes, my hours, and then my rate is similar. All I had was the amount. I didn't have the currency. What I'm going to do, this gives me just a prompt talking about how it handles duplicates. I'm not really worried about that right now because I'm just getting started. So I'm going to go ahead and import all 10 rows from my spreadsheet. And finished importing. So if I just do a quick refresh, now we can see all of my projects are here. So, you know, what's nice about this is now immediately after just a few minutes, I've got all of my work from our spreadsheet here. I can open any of these. I can comment back and forth with my team. I can add files. I can choose files locally from my computer, or I can add any number you know, of file services. So you'll see here, you know, things like ShareFile, OneDrive, Google Drive. It's really nice to be able to bring files and attachments into the work that you're doing inside of Podio. I can also create tasks. So I can create a task for myself, for somebody else, and we can keep up to date on all of the work that needs to be done. And all of the tasks that need to be assigned related to different projects or you know, requests or whatever kind of work it is that we're managing inside of Podio. Now, what's kind of nice here is because I clicked the T on my keyboard as the shortcut to create a task, because I was on this help desk implementation project, this task knows it's in the context of that project. So if I say, you know, finalize requirements, documentation, I can choose myself, so Screech Powers. I can choose today's date. Labels are able to be set by each individual user. I can even attach a file to the task. I'm going to go ahead and just create. So now we'll see that that task lives here on the project itself. But as a user, I can always come back up to the top and see a list of all my tasks. And I can sort those by due date, by workspace, by app. Again, I can create unique labels for myself. Some people might do high, medium, low, or critical, urgent. You know, each user again has that flexibility to choose what they want to do there. But again, you know, I now have the ability to come in and start working here. So the next thing I'll tackle real quick is the modification of the template. So let's say, you know, I want to know, well, what's, you know, I've got my hours and my rate. What does that project total look like? Well, I didn't add that field when I created it, but I can come back in and add it later. So I'm going to go ahead and modify template. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to choose a calculation field. And calculation fields can serve a number of different purposes, some very simple, some very advanced. These field types support JavaScript, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say project total cost. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose the tokens hours times rate. So I'm going to do at project hours, and I'm going to do at hourly rate. and it's going to give me my total. So what I'm going to do now is click done. And now when I come into one of these, you'll see Podio's automatically calculating the total here. So what's nice about this is just like any spreadsheet or table set or data set, now I can start to filter and sort and report on the data. So let's say, this created what's called a view automatically. I don't like it. I'm going to get rid of it. Let's say I want to see only the projects that are open. So I want to go to project status and filter to not started, in progress, on hold. So you'll see here I've now filtered down to 8 of the 11. Now what I can do is I can sort by things like project status. Let's say I can choose to take out the notes. I just want to see this. Maybe I want to, kind of make these columns a little bit smaller. This one a little bit bigger. So now I can save this as a view. So a view is just a saved filter and layout. So I'm going to go ahead and save this. This is called Open Projects. I'm going to save it to my team views because I'm the administrator of this workspace. I can create a view that the entire team can use, and I'm going to do by project status. So now anytime somebody comes to this app and they go to this view, we can filter down right to just not started, or we can see only those that are in progress. What's nice about this is I can also create views for myself. So maybe I don't like the table view. Maybe I like, more of the Kanban kind of view, where we can start to, move things and drag things around. I can do that. I can create a new view with this. I'm going to call this, my open projects. I'm going to put it in private views, and maybe I want to do, split by status again. So now I can toggle between the two and see my projects, not started, in progress, so on and so forth. So a lot of flexibility, a lot of ways to view your data and work together on your data as you get into Podio. So let me stop for a second. Kelly, see if you've got anything to add, see if there's any Q&A, and go from there.
So we do have one question from Michelle. It's actually a really good question. A question on the comments in the activity view. In some of the projects I am working on, I have both automated updates and human comments. Is there any way to filter for either? So I'm, for instance, able to just see the human-made comments or the automated ones?
Yes. So you can toggle back and forth between comments and activity. So activity is going to show you everything. Comments will show you comments that were left by a user. Now, the question about the workflow piece, if the workflow itself, is leaving a comment, it's going to show up in comments. But you can filter down and see only the discussion that's gone on, whether that's created by an individual person like myself, or whether you've got a workflow that adds a comment. You can see all of those here. You can also then come back and see, now this one doesn't have very much activity in the activity feed, but as you start working with, a certain project or a certain item over time, there's going to be a whole lot of stuff to go through here, right? So it does help, and you can go and filter down to just comments by doing that up at the top here.
And so far, that's been the only question. Michelle, if that was not your question or we misunderstood, feel free to let us know, and we're happy to clarify that for you. But yeah, I actually always use that, especially have a lot of automations going. Now, like Joel said, if the automation is actually making a comment, that has to, authenticate through like a user or the app. So it needs that permission. So it's still going to appear as a comment. But if it's just, a lot of updates and changes made, then you can click on that comments. But that's the only question we have so far.
Okay, cool. All right. So one other thing I'll touch on real quick. So if you recall in the template, if we go down to our dates, I clicked this little show in calendar. So what does that mean? That means that, I can do a couple of things. One, I can switch the view in this app to the calendar layout, and we can see things, by week, by month, by day. So here's all of, the projects laid out in kind of a calendar view. Now, what I can also do, let's go ahead and modify the template again. Let's go ahead and add a project owner. So What I want to do is add a member field. I'm going to call this project owner. Now, what I'm going to do is switch back to this so I can assign myself a number of these. So let's go ahead and make me that one. Oops. These little arrows over here kind of hide. They're sneaky. So you can kind of navigate through that way. That one. I'll just make myself the owner of 3 of them. So what I can do now is I can actually leverage this Podio calendar up here. So if I open this up, you'll see I can show by month, by week, by day, but I can start to filter down how much of this data I see. So right now, it's showing me everything that's date related in any workspace. Now, thankfully for me right now, that's one workspace and one app. If you've got multiple apps and multiple workspaces, all with those date fields exposed, this gets a little bit noisy. But what you can do is you can start to filter it down. So what I usually do, I usually choose this one here, involving and related to me, because again, as it relates to these projects, I just made myself the project owner. So if I do this, we'll see now within my Podio calendar, I can see these projects. I can even see my tasks. So you'll see here I've got include tasks. What's nice about this is I can even export these to an external calendar. So I can send these out to my Office 365 calendar or my Google calendar. So when I go look at my Outlook calendar, for example, I can see, all of my normal day-to-day meetings and activities. But I can also see the export of all of the Podio items, that are having a date and time attached to them as well. So it gives you a really consolidated view of everything. What's kind of nice is actually when you do set up that export, there's another button that lets you basically import a read-only view of your Outlook. So you can do kind of the opposite of that as well. You can see from Podio all of your Podio items here, which are clickable. I can go through and open these things right from the calendar view. But I can also see read-only versions of all of my items, that live on my Outlook calendar, for example. So it's kind of nice if you're doing a lot of work that's, date focused and deadlines and things like that. I can even move these things around on the calendar. So let's say this task, I just want to move to tomorrow. I can go ahead and just slide it over there, and now it's tomorrow. So if I come refresh this, now we see it's tomorrow. Okay. Now, one thing I want to talk about next, that's really, really important, in Podio is the idea of app relationships. So what we did is we created, a single app for projects. A lot of times, though, you have things that are related to this. So in our example, I just put in a text field for a customer name. But a lot of times what we're doing is related to that customer. They've obviously got more than a name. Maybe they've got, a phone number, an email address, a location. Maybe there's other categories that we want to use to tag different customer types. So what I can do is I can actually build another application and relate it to this project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go create another app. I'm going to call this Contacts. There's one that I usually use, this little address book. Again, I'm going to do table, create app. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say contact name, and then I'm going to drag over the normal fields that we would have with a contact. So let's do these. So call this contact phone, contact email, address. Let's make this contact status, feed, active, inactive. And I can, again, give these different colors here. So let's just go create one right now for me. Let's do. And what's nice about these fields, so these all have live maps that you can configure as well. So you'll see here single line address or multi-line show map or not show map. What's kind of handy about this is if you happen to be using the Podio mobile app, and you click on a map like this, it'll actually ask you, which map service, you want to open, if it's Apple Maps, if you're on an iPhone, or Google Maps, and start routing directions. But this is handy in that scenario. I'm going to go ahead and mark this as a lead for now, because what I want to do is I now want to create a relationship between our projects and our contacts. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move this over because I want that there. And I'm going to go ahead and modify our template. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this relationship field. I'm going to bring that over here. And now it's asking me which apps do I want to reference. So I'm going to say contacts, all items, and I'm going to call this related contact. So now what I can do is I can no longer have just a customer name. I can go back through and remove that when I create all these, but I can create a relationship between these. So now, if I were to click over to this contact, we'll see it's related to a project. Click back over to the project, we'll see it's related to this contact. And the fields that show up here on this little kind of rectangle card, can be changed and customized as well. But what's really nice is now all of that information about that contact as part of a workflow, for example, can be used, with this project. So let's say, for example, I wanted to write a workflow that said, when a contact goes from lead to active, it creates a project. It can pull forward, obviously, this item itself and add it as a relationship to the project. But maybe we want to do something like send an email, to that contact. We could grab the details, from this contact, including email address, and do something like send them an email. So, we'll touch on the workflows here in just a minute, but there's a lot of things you can do by relating essentially these applications or these data tables together. So, what we've seen with a lot of customers is, for example, maybe something like projects. It's not just a project. Projects have customers. Maybe customers start as leads. Downstream, maybe projects have things like time cards. Maybe time cards are things that the team is creating and submitting. So, all of that structure, if you're managing that in things like spreadsheets or other rigid systems that, like I said earlier, don't really fit your needs, you can create all of those applications and relate them together here in Podio. Now, one other thing real quick, just to talk on some reporting type examples. So you'll see up here on the top, I can also create reports. So I'm set on this view called Open Projects. And what I want to do is I just want to get a list of open projects. So you'll see here I've got just the general count. I can break this down further. So I can show projects by status. And again, these are open projects because I'm on this filter. If I'm on the premium plan, I can choose, the different layouts here. I want to go by project status, ascending. Yep. So it kind of gives me a little bit of a funnel view. And what I can do is I can choose where to put this report. Now, to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to name this Open Projects unit is projects. I'm just going to put this in the app reports. So if I do this, you'll see this application created a number of these little report widgets for me when I created the app. But, we'll see our report here. I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. This is accessible by just clicking this reports button. What's nice about this is I can also add this to the workspace homepage. So again, earlier when we talked about this being kind of a dashboard, for the team, we can come in and we can see now my calendar is populated. I can see all the tasks in the workspace. So now we've got data starting to populate through to our workspace. And these things are all clickable. So if I want to see, okay, there's two that haven't started, what's going on with these? I can click right in and see, oh, there's no project owner. Let's go assign a project owner to these. Another thing I can do is let's go actually to this view we created because now I want to make this by status. And what I want to do is I actually want to make these mine. So I'm going to filter it down to only those where I'm the project owner. So there's only 4. I'm going to overwrite this view. So now I've got 4 projects. Now here's the other cool thing in Podio is every user has their own unique Podio homepage or dashboard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a very simple report. It's just going to be a count. I'm going to call this, my open projects. I'm going to call this open projects. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this on my homepage. Now, your individual Podio homepage as a user exists. If I click this logo, when I click save, it's just going to take me there. But now you can see, my own Podio homepage has started to build out. So I've got, this little projects widget I can update. I can do something like this, kind of even these out. It's already got recent items. I can remove this. I can add widgets or tiles. But again, all of these things are actionable. So if I, come in the day, go to Podio, I see, okay, I've got to go work on these projects, or they could be anything. They could be requests that you need to approve, you name it. I can just click these and it's going to take me right to that set of 4. So lots of possibilities there. Let's talk workflows for a quick second. Depending on which your plan you're on. So you might be on the Podio Plus plan. You might actually be on the free plan. You might be on the premium plan. There are different workflow engines for the Plus plan and the premium plan. So what I'll do real quick is I'll show you a workflow using the Plus plan, that allows you to do some simple automations. So let's say what I want to do is have an automation that runs anytime one of these things is created. I automatically want to set the status to not started. I don't want to have to come do that every time. What I can do is I can click workflows, and I'm going to create a workflow. Now, in the Plus plan, in this workflow engine, there's only 2 triggers. The number of triggers in the advanced workflow engine is much greater. There's a lot of additional logic and things you can do. There's 2 triggers. I can add in some basic logic, and then there's 5 actions. I can create a task, add a comment. I can create another item somewhere else. I can update the item here, or I can update a related item. So let's just say, when a project's created, I just want to do something like set the status to not started. Very simple. So I'm just going to call this on create update status to not started. So now if I go create a new project, let's just do this just for fun, save project. We should see the workflow trigger, and it should auto set that to not started. There it goes. I think it did it right before I refreshed, but sometimes I get impatient with the workflow. So it automatically set to not started. Now, there's a number of things that automation obviously allows you to do. Things like update items, leave comments, create tasks. Just to give you an idea, using the advanced workflow engine, I'm not going to go through and build out workflows, but I'll just show you an example. In this example, what we're doing is tracking expense requests. Now, what I didn't show you is each app can also be configured as a web form. So I can create apps from an import. I can manually create them. I can also set them up as a web form that can live as an external link or be embedded in a website. So if you've got something like a requests app, or something like a leads app, or something where you need to take in data from an external source and create a Podio item from it, web forms is a really good option. What I did in this workspace that I've already set up is I tied a web form to this expense request app. So what we can do is if we open that up, I've gone through and kind of customized and modified the form. I'm going to choose who I am. I'm going to say I'm Zach Morris. I need to request travel. I'm going to say, this is $2,000. I have no idea where I'm going for that. let's say it's next Friday. You know, going to some conference, I don't know. I'm going to submit my request. Now, inside of Podio, we'll see that this thing was already created. So we'll come in and we'll look at it. So we see here, we've got all the information that we captured, from the form, the type, the value, the date, the details. But what you'll see is a workflow that triggered. So we saw it went from received, we tagged the created date, and we also wrote into the workflow, a way to track, who Zach's manager is. So it knows his manager is Jesse. And what it did in the same workflow is it knows if this dollar value is over a certain limit, so we have some branch logic, it should either approve or send out for approval. Because it's over that limit, the same workflow sent a couple of emails. So if I go check these, so the first email goes to the user, right? And this email template was created in the advanced workflow engine. It's just telling Zach, we got your request. Here's the details. You can come back and check the status by clicking a button. What it also did, and I'm using the same email address, is it sent an email to his manager. So it sent an email to Jesse with the same details, and it's asking her to approve or decline. Now, there's a number of ways to do this. You could put in the link to the Podio item, and she could come back and just mark approved. In this case, we said, you know what? Managers don't like doing that. They just want to approve it right from the email. They're going to click approved. They're going to get a little confirmation. And we just saw the status go from out to approval or out for approval to approve. So there's a number of things that you can do with the advanced workflow engine. And we're going to be hosting additional webinars on getting started with Podio workflow automation because there is so much that you can do with it. But that is just one example there. So a couple of things I'll talk about with resources. One, we've created kind of a value activation checklist. It's really just a getting started checklist. It's just a little PDF, you can save, print, set there as you get started. Just kind of a reminder of the things to think about, as you're getting going with Podio. I'll make sure to add this to the chat so everybody has access to it. But what I want to do is come back over here real quick. Because there's a number of resources out there to help you at any stage of your Podio journey. So like Kelly said, our Podio partners play a big role in everything we do. So if you're somebody who says, this looks easy-ish, or it looks easy, but I don't have time, or maybe I do have time, I just don't want to learn to do it. I just want to tell somebody what I want, and I want them to build it. Our Podio partners are really, really good at taking those requirements in and working with you one-on-one to put together a plan to actually implement different solutions for you. Outside of the partners, when it comes to the Podio team and the resources we have, there's a few different things here. One is obviously if you go the self-service path. I mentioned the checklist. I'll show you how to get to a lot of these resources in just a second, but we've got a YouTube video that's got an increasing amount of content. Podio's documentation, there is an awful lot there. There's a lot inside of the documents and things that you can review and use to learn. Like I mentioned earlier, there's an app market with templates, and we're hosting webinars just like this. So, you might see a pop-up, for something like, getting started with workflows or getting started with Podio. We do our best to host a number of different webinars on different topics to help our customers learn, and enable themselves to go build inside of Podio. Another thing we have is a really, really strong community. So I would say everything I've learned about Podio and building with Podio, at some point I've probably learned from somebody else. So we really encourage all of our partners and customers, our team included, to go participate in the community. So there's a public community forum. There's things that we're working on like a builders hub and Podio labs where you can come in and talk with other people who are building applications and solutions in Podio, see how they've done things, see different examples, participate in community discussions as well. And then there's our customer experience team. So, where the partners are there to do more hands-on delivery, our team is certainly here to help with things like, advice, enablement, guidance, certainly technical troubleshooting, product feedback, all of those sorts of things. And what's really nice is pretty much all of that is accessible down here in this little progress logo that kind of hides that we call Resource Center. So if I go to Resource Center, you can see here and get started. There's links to YouTube, there's links to the docs, to the community. You'll see here there's what's new. So you'll see, this one had 10 unread things, just telling you about different features that we had released, not too long in the past. And then certainly getting help. So if we need something, like I said, around technical troubleshooting or billing or something like that, you can always click this. It'll take you to the support page, which is still shared with, our friends at ShareFile. You can start a chat there, which goes directly to our team, and you can get help. If you do find yourselves needing help from a partner, there's a quick form you can fill out as well. Those actually go right to Kelly. So she reviews every one of those individually and works with you to get you mapped to exactly the right partner. And then certainly we've got a number of account managers, Matt being one, not the only one, but he is one that's out there to help with questions around pricing or upgrades, things like that. So, in fact, we're working on a new version of this resource center to bring even more helpful information into it. So, you guys can find everything you need without ever having to leave Podio to go look for it.